The Galactic Council building floated in the darkness of space like a giant silver flower. Inside its walls, creatures from 100 different worlds made decisions that affected billions of lives. They had been doing this for thousands of years, long before humans even learned to make fire. Ambassador Telos sat in his private office, his four purple eyes fixed on the glowing screen in front of him. He was a tall, thin creature with skin and long fingers that never stopped moving when he was nervous. Right now, his fingers were moving very fast. On the screen was a report about humans. Telos had read this report many times, but it still made his heart beat faster with fear. The report said that humans came from a planet called Earth. This planet was what scientists called a death world. The air was filled with a gas called oxygen, which could burn things and make metal rot. The planet had earthquakes that could destroy cities in seconds. It had giant waves that could swallow entire coastlines. It had storms that could tear buildings apart like paper. But the planet itself was not the worst part. The worst part was what lived on it. Earth was filled with dangerous creatures. There were tiny insects whose bite could kill a grown man. There were swimming animals with hundreds of sharp teeth that could smell blood from far away. There were large cats that hunted in the night and bears that could break bones with one swing of their paw. Every creature on Earth seemed designed to kill or avoid being killed. And humans had survived all of this. Not just survived. They had conquered their planet. They had built cities and machines and weapons. They had gone to their moon and back. They had split the smallest pieces of matter and released enough energy to destroy everything. Telos closed his eyes and remembered the images he had seen. Human wars, millions of their own kind dead, cities turned to ash, weapons that could crack a planet like an egg, and through it all the humans kept fighting. They never stopped. They never gave up. When one of them fell, two more would take their place. There was a story in the report that Telos could not forget. During one of their wars, a human soldier had been shot many times. His arm was broken. His leg was broken. He was bleeding badly. Any other species would have fallen down and waited for death. But this human kept fighting. He crawled toward his enemies with his one working arm, still trying to protect his friends. That was what humans were. That was why the galaxy feared them. The door to his office opened and Delegate Mora floated in. She was a crystalline, a being made of living glass that sang when she moved. Today her song was high and worried. "You have heard the news," she said. It was not a question. "The humans are coming to the summit," Telos replied. "They are sending a representative." "What kind of representative?" Telos looked at the screen again. "They call her a peacekeeper, but in their records she is listed as a soldier." Mora's crystal body rang with a sharp note of fear. "A soldier. They are sending a soldier to a peace summit." The humans say that peacekeepers are different from regular soldiers. They say peacekeepers are trained to stop fights, not start them. Telos shook his head slowly. "But I have seen what human soldiers can do. I do not understand how the same creature that can kill so easily can also want peace." "Perhaps it is a trick," Mora suggested. "Perhaps they want us to lower our guard." "Perhaps." Telos stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars burned in the endless darkness. Somewhere out there was Earth, the death world, home of the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever seen. "I have ordered the security teams to triple their numbers. I have asked for the best guards from every member world." "And the humans, what did they say about the extra security?" Telos turned back to Mora and his four eyes blinked one after another. "They laughed. They said it was not necessary. They said their peacekeeper would not cause any trouble. They laughed at our security. They were not being mean. They seemed amused, like a parent watching a child worry about monsters under the bed." Telos sat down heavily. "That is what worries me most, Delegate. They are not afraid of us at all. They do not see us as a threat. To them, we are like small animals making noise in the forest." Mara floated closer. What do we know about this peacekeeper they are sending? Telos pulled up another file on his screen. A picture appeared. It showed a human female with dark hair and dark eyes. She was small, even for a human. Her face was calm and her mouth was curved in a slight smile. Her name is, Telos said. She has been a peacekeeper for 12 of their years. Her record shows that she has been sent to many dangerous places, war zones, disaster areas, hostage situations. In every case, she resolved the problem without killing anyone. Without killing, Mora sounded surprised. Is that possible for a human? Apparently so, but that is not the strangest part. Telos pointed to a line in the file. In several cases, the people she was sent to stop ended up thanking her. Enemies who were trying to kill each other sat down together after she talked to them. Wars that had lasted for generations ended in weeks. How? No one knows. The reports just say that she talked to them. She listened. She asked questions. And somehow people who wanted nothing but blood and revenge decided to make peace instead. Mora's crystal body hummed with confusion. This does not match what we know about humans. They are violent. They are aggressive. They solve problems with force. I know, Telos said. That is why I am afraid. If a human can end wars with words, imagine what they could do if they decided to start one. Imagine that same skill, that same understanding of how minds work, used not for peace but for conquest. He looked at the picture of again. Her smile seemed kind. Her eyes seemed gentle. But Telos had learned long ago that the most dangerous creatures often look the most harmless. The summit begins in 3 days, he said. The human ship will arrive tomorrow. Whatever happens, we must be ready. Ready for what? Mora asked. Telos did not answer. He did not know what to be ready for. That was the problem with humans. No matter how much you studied them, no matter how many reports you read, they always found a way to surprise you. And surprises from humans were rarely good for anyone else. The human ship came out of faster-than-light travel like a fish jumping from water. It was a small ship, much smaller than the warships the Council had expected. It was painted white with blue stripes, and on its side were the words United Earth Peacekeeping Corps in several languages. In the docking bay, 50 armed guards stood in formation. They carried the best weapons their worlds could make. Behind them, Ambassador Telos and Delegate Mora waited with a group of other important officials. Everyone was tense. Everyone was afraid. The ship landed softly, its engines making a gentle humming sound. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the door opened and Lieutenant stepped out. She was even smaller than she had looked in the picture. She barely reached the chest of the shortest guard. Her dark hair was pulled back from her face, and she wore a simple blue uniform with no armor and no visible weapons. She carried only a small bag over her shoulder. She looked around the docking bay with wide, curious eyes. Then she smiled. It was not the smile of a predator. It was not the smile of someone planning violence. It was the smile of a person who was genuinely happy to be somewhere new. "Hello," she said, and her voice was warm and friendly. "Thank you so much for having me. I have been looking forward to this trip for months." The guards did not move. They had been trained to watch for threats, and they could not find any. This small, smiling human did not match anything they had been taught to expect. Ambassador Telos stepped forward. His 4 eyes studied carefully, looking for hidden weapons or signs of danger. He found nothing. "Lieutenant," he said formally, "welcome to the Galactic Council Station. I am Ambassador Telos of the Collective." Bowed, it was a human gesture of respect, bending at the waist with her hands at her sides. Several of the aliens had never seen this before and were not sure what it meant. "Ambassador Telos," said as she straightened up, "it is an honor to meet you. I have read about your work on the trade agreement of Sector 7. Very impressive." Telos blinked all 4 eyes at once. You have read about my work." "Of course, I always research the people I am going to meet, It helps me understand them better. Looked around the docking bay again. This station is beautiful. The architecture is amazing. Who designed it? The station was built by the Builders Guild of the Mora system, Delegate Mora said, floating forward. I am Delegate Mora. The crystalline people are proud to have contributed to its construction. His eyes lit up. The crystalline people, I have always wanted to meet one of your kind. The way your bodies convert light into music is fascinating. May I ask what emotion your current song represents? Mora's crystal body rang with a surprised note. No one had ever asked her that before. Most species could not even hear her songs. You can hear my frequencies, Mora asked. A little, admitted. Human ears are not very good compared to some species, but I can hear enough to know that you are curious about me, and maybe a little worried. Yes, Mora said, that is correct. Nodded, that makes sense. Humans have a bad reputation, I would be worried too. She looked at all the guards with their weapons. But I promise you I am not here to hurt anyone, I am here to help. As they walked through the station toward her quarters, stopped many times. She stopped to look at a painting on the wall and asked the guard next to her who the artist was. She stopped to watch a group of young aliens playing a game and asked what the rules were. She stopped to greet a cleaning worker and learned his name. By the time they reached her room, she had talked to at least 20 different people. She had learned their names, asked about their families, and thanked them for their work. Each time, she seemed genuinely interested in what they had to say. The guards reported to tell us that night. She thanked us for walking with her, one guard said. He was a big creature with scales and sharp teeth, bred for battle. He looked confused. She said she felt safe with us. She said she appreciated our hard work. She asked about my children, another guard added. She wanted to know their names and what they liked to do. When I told her my daughter wants to be a scientist, she said that was wonderful and asked what kind of science. Telos listened to report after report. Every single person who had met had the same story. She had been kind. She had been curious. She had made them feel important and valued. This must be a trick, Telos said when the reports were finished. She is trying to make us trust her. Then when our guard is down, she will strike. With respect, Ambassador, said the scaled guard, I do not think so. I have been trained to spot lies. I saw no lies in her. She meant every word she said. Then perhaps she is not a typical human, Delegate Mora suggested. Perhaps she is different from the rest of her kind. No, Telos said slowly. I think she is exactly what a human is supposed to be. We have been looking at only one side of them. We saw their wars and their weapons and their violence. But there must be another side. There must be something that makes them want to stop fighting, something that makes them build instead of destroy. He thought about the report he had read. All those wars, all that death. But after each war, the humans had rebuilt. They had planted forests where bombs had fallen. They had made parks where battles had been fought. They had turned weapons factories into schools. Why would a species do that? Why would they destroy and then create? Why would they kill and then heal? Telos did not have an answer. But for the first time since he learned about humans, he felt something other than fear. He felt curious. In her quarters, sat by the window and looked out at the stars. She had taken out a small book and was writing in it with a pen. Humans still used paper and ink sometimes, even though they had computers that could store unlimited information. She wrote about everyone she had met that day. She wrote about their names and their jobs and the things they had told her. She wrote about their fears and their hopes. She wrote about the way Delegate Mora's song changed when she was surprised, and the way Ambassador Telos's fingers moved when he was nervous. Understanding people was the first step to helping them, and was here to help. Tomorrow, the summit would begin. Representatives from dozens of worlds would come together to discuss trade and territory and 100 other things that could lead to peace or war. Knew that something would go wrong. Something always went wrong when so many different species tried to talk to each other. But that was okay. That was why she was here. She closed her book and looked at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home. A planet full of violence and beauty, of war and peace, of humans who could destroy everything and then choose to build it back up again. She smiled and went to sleep. Tomorrow would be interesting. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room had ever seen. It was shaped like a bowl, with rows of seats rising up on all sides. At the bottom was a speaking platform where delegates could address the assembly. Floating screens showed translations in hundreds of languages. Lights of every color filled the air. For 2 days, the summit had gone smoothly. Trade agreements were signed. Scientific partnerships were formed. Old friendships were renewed and new ones began. Sat in the human section and watched and listened and learned. She learned that they were proud but fair. She learned that the crystalline people valued harmony above all else. She learned that the small furry creatures called the Nyx were actually brilliant engineers who had built half the technology in the galaxy. She learned the names and histories and cultures of species she had only read about in books. On the 3rd day, everything changed. It started with a message. 3 colony worlds in the outer regions had been invaded. The invaders were the Dominion, a species of large armored warriors who believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. They had crossed into territory belonging to the Republic, a species of snake-like creatures who had lived in peace for centuries. The delegate rose from his seat. His name was Vex, and his long body coiled around the speaking platform like a spring ready to snap. His scales were bright red with anger, and his voice hissed through the hall. "This is an act of war," Vex declared. "They have invaded our worlds. They have taken our people prisoner. They have broken every treaty we have ever signed." On the other side of the hall, the delegate stood up. His name was, and he was huge, nearly 3 times the size of a human. His body was covered in thick plates of natural armor, and his hands ended in claws that could tear through metal. "The worlds were weak," said. His voice was deep and rumbling like thunder. "They had no defenses, no soldiers. They were asking to be conquered." "We are a peaceful people," Vex shouted. "We do not believe in war." "Then you are fools," replied. "The strong take from the weak. This is the natural order. This is how things have always been." The hall erupted in chaos. Delegates from other species started shouting. Some supported some just wanted everyone to stop yelling. Ambassador Telos tried to restore order, but no one was listening. Delegate Mora's crystal body was ringing with distress, the sound painful to everyone nearby. Guards pushed through the crowd, trying to keep the different species apart. Then Vex pulled out a blade. It was a ceremonial weapon, curved and sharp, passed down through generations of leaders. It was meant to be used only in ritual combat, a fight to the death between 2 champions. "I demand satisfaction," Vex hissed, pointing the blade at. "By the old laws I challenge you, blood for blood, your life for the lives you have taken." Laughed. It was a terrible sound, like rocks grinding together. "You challenge me. You are half my size. You have never fought anyone in your life." "Then my death will be quick, but at least I will have tried." Vex's coils tightened. "At least I will have done something." The guards raised their weapons. No one knew what to do. If they stopped the fight, they would insult both species. If they let it happen, one of the delegates would die, possibly starting a war that could kill millions. In the human section, stood up. She did not run. She did not shout. She simply walked down the stairs toward the speaking platform, her footsteps steady and calm. "Excuse me," she said. No one heard her. The shouting was too loud. "Excuse me," she said again, a little louder. Still nothing. Took a deep breath. Then she put 2 fingers in her mouth and whistled. The sound was incredibly loud, sharp enough to cut through all the noise. Everyone stopped and turned to look at her. She was standing between Vex and now, right in the middle of the speaking platform. This blade was inches from her throat. Its massive fist was raised above her head. One wrong move from either of them, and she would die instantly. She did not seem afraid at all. "I think there has been a misunderstanding," said calmly. Stared down at her. "Human, this is not your concern. Step aside or I will move you." "I would rather not step aside," replied. "And with respect, this is my concern. When two people are about to kill each other in a room full of diplomats, it becomes everyone's concern." Vex's blade had not moved. "You are brave, human, or stupid, perhaps both." "Probably both," agreed. "But I am also curious. May I ask you both some questions?" "Questions?" Sounded confused. "We are about to fight to the death and you want to ask questions?" "Yes, just a few." Looked up at him. "Delegate, why did they invade those colony worlds? What did you hope to gain?" Was so surprised by the question that he actually answered. "Resources. They have mining rights to asteroid fields rich in rare metals, metals we need to build our ships." "And Delegate Vex," continued, turning to the, "why did they not share those mining rights? Surely there is enough for everyone." Vex's tongue flicked out in anger. "They have betrayed us before. 50 years ago they attacked our trade ships, killed thousands of our people. Why should we trust them now?" "I see," nodded slowly. "So the need resources and the do not trust them because of past violence. Is that correct?" Both delegates paused. Neither had expected their conflict to be summarized so simply. "They are monsters," Vex hissed. "They only understand force." "And they are cowards," growled. "They hide behind treaties and expect the universe to protect them." "Okay," said. "So you both think the other side is the problem, but let me ask you something else." She looked at Vex. "If they apologized for what happened 50 years ago and offered fair payment for the mining rights, would you consider it?" Vex's coils loosened slightly. Perhaps if they were sincere." Turn 2. "And if they agreed to share the mining rights for a fair price, would your people accept that instead of war?" His fist slowly lowered. "War is expensive, many would die. If we could get what we need without fighting—" He stopped, seeming surprised by his own words. "So both of you want the same thing," said. "You want security for your people. You want resources to survive. You want to be treated with respect." She smiled. "Those do not sound like things worth dying for. Those sound like things worth talking about." The hall was completely silent now. Every eye was on the small human standing between two species that had been ready to kill each other moments ago. "I am not saying this will be easy," continued. "There is a lot of history between your peoples, a lot of pain, a lot of anger, but killing each other will not fix any of that. It will only create more pain and more anger for the next generation." She looked at, "You said the strong take from the weak, but is that really what you want to teach your children? That the only way to get what they need is to hurt someone else?" Then she looked at Vex. "You said your people do not believe in war, but holding on to old hate is a kind of war too. It is a war that never ends." She held out her hands, one toward each of them. "I am asking you to try something different, just for a few hours. Put away the blade, lower the fist, sit down with me and let us talk about what you really need." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Vex slowly lowered his blade and slowly unclenched his fist. Smiled. "Thank you," she said. "Now let us find a quiet room. I think we have a lot to discuss." The small meeting room had a round table and 3 chairs. Had asked for it specifically because she did not want anyone to feel like they were sitting at the head. At a round table, everyone was equal. Barely fit in his chair. His armored body was made for battlefields, not conference rooms. Every few minutes he shifted uncomfortably, his claws scratching against the metal seat. Vex had coiled himself around his chair, his long body wrapped in tight loops. His blade lay on the table in front of him. He had not put it away, but he had not touched it either. Sat between them with a cup of tea and a small notebook. "Before we begin," she said, "I want to set some rules. First, everyone gets to speak without being interrupted. Second, we focus on what we need, not what we think we deserve. Third, we stay in this room until we find a solution or until we all agree there is no solution to be found. Is that acceptable?" Snorted, "The do not follow rules made by others." "These are not rules made by others," said. "These are rules I am asking you to accept. There is a difference. You can choose to accept them or not. But if you choose not to, then this conversation is over and we go back to the hall where you were about to start a war." Was silent for a moment, then he nodded slowly. "Fine, I accept your rules." Vex hissed softly, "As do I." "Good, then let us start." Opened her notebook. "Delegate, please tell me about not about this conflict, about your people. What are they like? What do they value?" The question surprised. He had expected to argue about territory and treaties. No one had ever asked him to talk about his people. "They are warriors," he said after a moment. "We have always been warriors. Our world was harsh. Only the strong survived. We learned to fight before we learned to walk." "That sounds difficult," said, "growing up in such a hard place." "It made us strong." "Yes, but did it make you happy?" Stared at her. No one had ever asked him that before. Happy? What does happiness have to do with anything? "Everything," said. "Why do the fight? What do you hope to achieve?" "We fight for our families, for our clans, for our future." "So you fight so that the people you love can have better lives?" Claws dug into the table. "Yes." "And would you say that the people on those colony worlds also love their families, also want better lives for their children?" The question hung in the air. Did not answer, but his eyes moved to Vex. Turned to the delegate. "Delegate Vex, please tell me about your people." Vex uncoiled slightly. "They are an old species. We have lived in peace for over 1,000 years. We believe that harmony is the highest goal. We do not fight because we know that fighting only leads to more fighting." "That is beautiful," said. "But how do you protect yourselves when others do not share your beliefs?" Vex's scales darkened. We relied on treaties, on agreements, on the good faith of others. And when that good faith was broken, we suffered." Vex's voice was heavy with old pain. 50 years ago they attacked our trade ships. We had done nothing to provoke them. We lost thousands of our people, families destroyed, children orphaned." "I am sorry," said, and she meant it. "That must have been terrible." "It was, and now they have done it again, invaded our worlds, taken our people." Vex's coils tightened. "How can we trust them? How can we ever trust them again?" "You cannot," said simply. "Not yet. Trust is not something you give freely. It is something that must be earned. But here is the question. Do you want to spend the rest of your existence waiting for the next attack? Or do you want to find a way forward?" The conversation continued for hours. Asked question after question. She asked about history and culture, about hopes and fears, about children and parents, and the future that each species wanted for themselves. Slowly a picture began to form. They were not evil, they were desperate. There was dying, its resources almost gone. They needed rare metals to build ships that could take their people to new worlds. Without those metals, the species would slowly die out. They were not cowards. They were traumatized. The attack 50 years ago had been led by a warlord who was now dead. The current government had never apologized because, in their culture, apologizing was seen as weakness. But many secretly regretted what had happened. "So let me see if I understand," said, many hours into the negotiation. "They need metals to survive. They have access to those metals but are afraid to share them because of past violence. Is that correct?" Both delegates nodded. "And they attacked the colonies because they felt they had no other choice. They refused to negotiate because they did not trust the. Is that also correct?" More nods. "Then it seems to me that the problem is not resources. Resources can be shared. The problem is trust. How do we build trust between two species that have hurt each other? Shifted in his chair. Among the trust is built through shared struggle. When two warriors fight side by side, they become brothers. But we do not fight, Vex said. That is not our way. There are other kinds of struggle, said. What if thee and work together on something? A joint project that would benefit both species. Vex considered this. The asteroid fields are dangerous to mine. They have the maps and the knowledge, but not the ships or the workers. They have strong ships and many workers, but they do not know the fields. What if you combined your strengths, suggested. Knowledge and labor, share the work, share the metals, share the profit. His eyes narrowed. And the colonies, we have already taken them. Then give them back, said simply. Return the prisoners, withdraw your forces, show that you can be trusted. That would look like weakness. The Council would never accept it. Would they accept the alternative? A long war against a species that has allies throughout the galaxy. A war that would drain resources you cannot afford to lose. Leaned forward. Delegate, you told me that the fight for their families. Is fighting this war really the best thing for families, or would peace be better? The room fell silent, stared at the table, his claws motionless for the first time all day. Finally he spoke. If they would agree to the joint mining operation, if they would share the metals fairly, the Council might agree to withdraw. Vex's scales shifted. And the attack 50 years ago, will we simply forget it happened? Shook her head. No, you should not forget, but you could forgive. Not for yourselves. Carrying that anger is a weight that is crushing your people. You can set it down without pretending it was never there. She looked at, and could acknowledge what happened. Not apologize in the way that feels like weakness to your people, but acknowledge the pain that was caused. Say that you wish it had not happened. That is not weakness. That is honesty. And Vex looked at each other across the table. For the first time, they were not looking at an enemy. They were looking at another being who was trying to protect their people. I will speak to my council, said slowly. As will I, Vex replied. Smiled, it was a tired smile. She had been talking for 18 hours without rest, but it was also a hopeful smile. That is all I ask, she said. Speak to your councils, think about what we discussed, and remember that the beings on the other side of this conflict are not so different from you. They want safety. They want respect. They want a future for their children. She stood up and bowed to both of them. Thank you for talking. Thank you for listening. That is the hardest part, and you both did it. As she left the room, she heard and Vex speaking quietly to each other. They were not shouting. They were not threatening. They were talking. It was a start. The agreement was signed 3 days later. It was not a perfect agreement. They would withdraw from 2 of the 3 colony worlds immediately. The third would become a joint territory, managed by both species together. They would share mining rights to the asteroid fields in exchange for fair payment. A council with members from both species would be created to handle future disagreements. The prisoners were released. The warships went home. The families that had been torn apart were reunited. When the document was signed, something strange happened. Reached out his massive clawed hand toward Vex. They stared at it for a long moment. Then slowly, he extended his own tail and wrapped it around this arm. It was a gesture that had never happened before in the history of the galaxy. A warrior and a pacifist, touching in peace. Watched from the side of the room, her notebook in her hands. She did not speak. She did not take credit. She simply smiled and wrote down what she saw. Ambassador Telos stood next to her. His 4 eyes were blinking rapidly, which meant he was experiencing strong emotions. I do not understand, he said quietly. How did you do this? They were ready to kill each other. They were ready to start a war that could have lasted generations, and you stopped it with words. I did not stop anything, replied. They stopped it themselves. I just helped them see what they really wanted. But how did you know what to say, what questions to ask? Thought about this for a moment. I listened. That is the most important part. Most people do not really listen when others speak. They are too busy thinking about what they want to say next. But if you truly listen, people will tell you everything you need to know. That cannot be all, Tellus said. There must be something more. There is. Turned to look at him. I believed in them. I believed that they were good beings who wanted peace. Even when they were shouting and threatening, I believed that underneath all that anger was just fear. Fear for their families, fear for their future, fear of being hurt again. And when you showed them that you understood their fear, they did not need to be afraid anymore. Fear makes people do terrible things. But when the fear goes away, most people want to do good things instead. Tellus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "The council will want to report on what happened here. They will want to understand how a single human changed everything." I did not change everything, said. I just opened a door, and Vex walked through it themselves. News of the agreement spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Ships carried the story from system to system. News broadcasts played recordings of the moment when and Vex touched for the first time. Scientists and philosophers debated what it meant. But the story that spread fastest was the story of the human. The human who had walked between two enemies without fear. The human who had stopped a war with questions instead of weapons. The human who came from a species of warriors and chose to be a peacekeeper. Ambassador Tellus wrote his report to the Galactic Council. It was the most important document he had ever written, and he chose his words carefully. "We were wrong about the humans," he wrote. "We saw their history of violence and assumed they were nothing but destroyers. We saw their weapons and believed they only knew how to kill. We were afraid of them because they were different from us. But Lieutenant showed us something we had missed. The humans are not violent because they enjoy hurting others. They are violent because they feel things deeply. They love with all their hearts, and they fight to protect what they love. When there is nothing to fight against, they turn that same energy toward building and creating and healing. The most dangerous thing about humans is not their weapons or their soldiers. The most dangerous thing about humans is their hope. They have survived so much pain and suffering, and yet they still believe that tomorrow can be better than today. They still believe that enemies can become friends. They still believe that peace is possible. This hope is like a fire. It can burn and destroy, or it can warm and light the way. Lieutenant carries this fire, and she uses it to help others find their own light. I recommend that the Council no longer view humans as a threat. Instead, we should view them as an example. If a species that has known so much war can choose peace, then perhaps we all can." 3 years passed. The Accords held. The joint mining operation became one of the most successful partnerships in galactic history, and Vex became unlikely friends, meeting every year to share meals and stories. On a station in a quiet part of the galaxy, a new building was constructed. It was called the Galactic Peacekeeping Academy, and it trained beings from all species in the arts of listening, understanding, and resolving conflicts without violence. Commander stood on the observation deck of this academy looking out at the stars. Her hair had a few streaks of now, but her eyes were the same, warm, curious, kind. Behind her, young cadets from 47 different species practiced communication exercises. A was learning to listen without interrupting. A was learning to express anger without threatening. A was learning that sometimes the best answer was a question. A young cadet approached nervously. He was much smaller than, still young enough that his armor plates were soft. "Commander, may I speak with you?" Turned and smiled. "Of course, what is your name?" "I am called Tarn. My father was on the delegation during the crisis. He says you saved his life." "I remember your father," said. "He was very brave to sit in that room and talk instead of fight. How is he doing?" "He is well. He tells the story of that day to everyone who will listen." Tarn hesitated. "Commander, may I ask you something?" Anything. Why did you become a peacekeeper? You are human. Your people are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. You could have been a general, a conqueror. Why did you choose this path? Looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home. A planet that had seen so much suffering and so much beauty, so much war and so much peace. When I was young, she said, I watched a war destroy my city. I saw people I loved hurt each other over things that did not matter. I saw families torn apart by hate and fear. That must have made you angry. It did. For a long time, I wanted to fight back. I wanted to hurt the people who had hurt us. I thought that was the only way to make things right. What changed? Smiled. I met someone like me, a peacekeeper who came to our city after the fighting stopped. She did not carry a weapon. She did not make threats. She just listened. She listened to everyone, the victims and the attackers, the survivors and the families of the dead. She listened to them all. And then something amazing happened. People who had wanted to kill each other started talking. They realized that they were not so different. They realized that they had all lost things they loved. They realized that more fighting would only mean more loss. Turn back to Tarn. That peacekeeper did not save anyone's life directly. She never touched a weapon, but she saved thousands of lives by helping people choose peace instead of war. I wanted to do the same. Tarn's armor plates shifted. It was a sign of deep thought. My people have always believed that strength means being able to destroy your enemies, but you believe that strength means something different. I believe that the strongest thing anyone can do is understand someone they disagree with, said. It is easy to hate. It is easy to fight. It is hard to sit across from someone who has hurt you and try to see the world through their eyes. That takes real courage. Is that what you did with my father and Delegate Vex? Yes, and they were both very brave to do the same. The peace between thee and does not exist because of me. It exists because your father and Vex chose to be brave. They chose to listen instead of fight. They chose hope instead of hate. Tarn straightened up, his young eyes bright with determination. I want to be like that. I want to help my people choose peace. Put her hand on his shoulder. It was a human gesture of connection, and Tarn understood it perfectly. Then you have already started, she said. The first step to being a peacekeeper is wanting to help. The second step is believing that people can change. Everything else is just practice. She looked out at her students, dozens of species working together, learning from each other, becoming something new. Your father once asked me how I stopped a war, said. I told him that I did not stop anything. I just helped people remember something they had forgotten. What was that? Smiled, the same warm smile that had ended a war and started a legend. That we are all just people, different bodies, different histories, different worlds, but the same hopes and fears, the same love for our families, the same wish for a better tomorrow. She turned back to the stars one last time. And that is the most human thing of all.